in the ancient world, before the rise of medieval kingdoms and before the universities of Europe took shape, one man emerged as a bridge between philosophy and faith, between reason and revelation. His name was Augustine of Hippo, later known as Saint Augustine, and his voice still echoes across the centuries. To understand Augustine is to understand one of the most profound transformations in human thought, a transformation that merged the intellectual legacy of Plato and the Greeks with the moral and spiritual demands of Christianity. He lived in an era of collapse, when the Roman Empire was crumbling, cities were burning, and civilizations were changing. Yet out of that chaos, he carved ideas so lasting that they shaped the very soul of the West. Augustine was born in 354 AD, in a small town called Thagast, in North Africa, part of the Roman Empire. His upbringing was humble but not without significance. His father, Patricius, was a pagan, a man concerned with worldly ambition and reputation. His mother, Monica, was a devout Christian, remembered to this day as Saint Monica. This split between a father tied to Roman culture and a mother devoted to Christ was the first taste of the inner conflict that would define Augustine's life. He grew up torn between two worlds, the pursuit of earthly glory and the call to higher, spiritual truth. From an early age, Augustine showed brilliance. He was sent to study rhetoric, the art of persuasion, in Carthage, one of the greatest cities of the Roman world. There, he immersed himself in philosophy, literature, and the quest for truth. But his early years were not holy. Augustine himself admitted later in his famous work, Confessions, that he was drawn into a life of lust, pride, and ambition. He sought pleasure in relationships, in entertainment, and in the pride of intellect. He even joined a movement known as Manichaeism, a religion that explained the world in terms of a constant battle between light and darkness, good and evil. At the time, it seemed like a satisfying philosophy, but Augustine later realized it lacked depth. It excused human weakness rather than transforming it. Yet this stage of his life was crucial, because it revealed a young man restless for answers. That restlessness, in fact, became the very theme of his life. In Confessions, Augustine famously wrote, "Our heart is restless until it rests in you, O Lord." That sentence, echoing across centuries, captures what drove him, a search for meaning, for a final place where the soul could find peace. He chased after truth in philosophy, in ambition, in relationships, in religions, but none satisfied him fully. This restlessness is what makes Augustine so deeply human. Everyone, whether in the 4th century or today, knows that feeling, the longing for fulfillment, the hunger for something that does not fade with time. Augustine's greatness was not that he was flawless, but that he wrestled honestly with his flaws. As Augustine's mind matured, he turned more deeply to philosophy. He studied Cicero, who inspired him with the idea that truth is worth seeking above all. He absorbed the works of Plato, especially through Plotinus, the great Neoplatonist. From Plato, Augustine inherited the sense that the material world is not ultimate, that there are higher realities, eternal and unchanging, beyond what the senses perceive. For Augustine, Plato opened the door to a spiritual worldview. Yet he still could not accept Christianity fully, because it seemed too simple, too humble compared to the grand systems of philosophy. It was in Milan, where Augustine went to teach rhetoric, that his turning point began. There he encountered Ambrose, the Christian bishop of the city, a man of wisdom, eloquence, and compassion. For the first time, Augustine saw Christianity not as blind faith, but as an intellectually and spiritually rich path. Ambrose showed him that the scriptures could be read with depth and reason, not just as literal stories but as profound symbols of truth. Slowly, the walls Augustine had built began to fall. The real breakthrough came in a garden. Augustine describes in Confessions that he was in despair, wrestling with his desires and his inability to change. He longed to give himself to God fully, but his passions held him back. In anguish, he cried out, and suddenly he heard the voice of a child chanting, "Take and read, take and read." He picked up a Bible and opened to Paul's letter to the Romans, where it read, "Put on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make no provision for the desires of the flesh." That moment broke him open. He felt as though light poured into his heart, and he finally surrendered. Soon after, Augustine was baptized by Ambrose, marking the beginning of a new life. This transformation was not just religious, it was philosophical. Augustine had finally found the unity of reason and faith he had been searching for. Philosophy had given him tools to think, but it had not given him salvation. Christianity gave him meaning, but it was enriched by philosophy. In Augustine, the two merged. He did not reject reason for blind faith, nor did he worship reason alone. Instead, he created a synthesis, the belief that faith and reason, revelation, and philosophy could work together to lead the soul to truth. As Bishop of Hippo in North Africa, Augustine became a teacher not just of Christians but of civilization itself. He wrote extensively, and his works became cornerstones of Western thought. His Confessions was the first true autobiography in history, a raw, honest account of his inner struggles and conversion. Unlike the heroic tales of Roman generals, Augustine's story was about the battle within the human heart. He showed that the true drama of life is not conquest of lands, but conquest of the soul. But perhaps his most influential work was The City of God. Written in response to the sack of Rome by barbarian tribes, when many accused Christianity of weakening the empire, Augustine argued that there are two cities, the city of man, built on pride, and the city of God, built on love. Earthly kingdoms rise and fall, he said, but the city of God is eternal. This vision reshaped how people saw history, politics, and purpose. Instead of despairing over Rome's fall, Augustine taught that no earthly power is ultimate. What matters most is the eternal destiny of the soul. Augustine's philosophy of human nature also left a lasting mark. He taught that humans are flawed by sin, not just in their actions but in their very condition. This was not to make people hopeless, but to emphasize the need for grace. For Augustine, no one can save themselves by willpower alone. We need divine grace, freely given, to heal our brokenness. This idea profoundly shaped Christian theology, influencing debates about free will, morality, and salvation for centuries. What made Augustine so powerful as a thinker was not just his abstract ideas, but his deep humanity. He knew the struggles of temptation, ambition, doubt, and despair. He did not hide them, he confessed them. That honesty gave his writings timeless relevance. People read Augustine and see themselves restless, searching, flawed, but still capable of transformation. His journey from a young man chasing pleasure to a philosopher of God's grace mirrors the human journey from confusion to clarity, from self to truth. Even beyond religion, Augustine's insights matter. His reflections on time, for example, remain profound. In Confessions, he asked, "What is time?" He concluded that the past is memory, the future is expectation, and only the present truly exists, yet even the present is fleeting. This meditation still resonates with modern philosophy and science. His understanding of human motivation, his analysis of pride and desire, his insistence on self-examination, all remain strikingly modern. Augustine shaped the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and even modern thought. Without Augustine, there would be no Aquinas synthesizing Aristotle with Christianity, no Luther sparking the Reformation, no existentialist grappling with the self. He was the root from which countless intellectual branches grew. His legacy is not just in theology, but in the very way the West thinks about morality, selfhood, history, and purpose. Yet Augustine is not just a historical figure. He is a mirror. His words reach across centuries to remind us of something essential, that the deepest battle we fight is within, that the greatest fulfillment is not in possessions or power, but in aligning the soul with truth. His confession of restlessness is the confession of all humanity. And his discovery of peace is an invitation still open. In today's chaotic world, where technology distracts us, ambition exhausts us, and relativism confuses us, Augustine's voice is more relevant than ever. He reminds us that meaning is not found in endless consumption, but in reflection. That peace is not in chasing every desire, but in mastering them. That identity is not built by applause, but by anchoring in something eternal. His wisdom is not locked in the 4th century, it breathes in every restless heart. Saint Augustine, the philosopher who shaped Christianity, is more than a saint in history books. He is a fellow traveler in the human search for truth. His journey from restless seeker to spiritual giant is not a story of perfection, but of transformation. And in that, he becomes not just a thinker to admire, but a guide to follow. For if a flawed, ambitious, restless young man from North Africa could find peace and shape the world, then perhaps so can we.